Gran Turismo 4 Prologue Edition is the demo that was recently released in Japan by Sony and developer Polyphony Digital that is designed to give fans who are eagerly awaiting the release of Gran Turismo 4 a taste of what's to come. Gran Turismo 4 is still currently slated for a 2004 release, but until that time, Polyphony and Sony have kind of cobbled together an assortment of modes and some cars and a few other little tidbits to give fans something to whet their appetites for until they can get their hands on the final game. The game comes with about 50 vehicles ranging from consumer models such as a 2003 model Nissan March to an F1 racer like the McLaren GTR Fina. There are also a few surprises like the Mazda Kusabi, which is a futuristic concept car that made its debut at the Frankfurt Motor Show just this summer. But these and a number of other cars actually aren't available from the beginning. You're only going to have about a dozen cars to start with when you first start the game. You'll have to unlock the cooler cars by playing through some of the game's modes. GT4 Prologue Edition contains two modes, Arcade and School. In the Arcade mode, you'll choose a car and a course and go on a time trial run. Some of the courses are going to give you the option to drive against cars that are controlled by AI opponents, and others will just have you racing by yourself. When you finish a race, you can save your run and play it back at any time or race against a ghost of it. You're going to find 5 racing courses, each with their own specific characteristics. The Tsukuba Circuit and the Fiji Speedway are both standard racing courses with differences in the number of curves and the length of the tracks. The New York course is built by closing out the roads in a city. Since the course is made out of street blocks, the curves are all 90-degree turns. The Grand Canyon course features a dirt road, so your vehicle will be constantly skidding, or drifting if you actually have that down, on the corners of the track. The Città d'Aria is a racing course based on an Italian town. The roads in the Città barely fit one car, and there are a number of blind corners that you're going to have to memorize in order to get through the course successfully. Now the school mode is a little bit different. It consists of about 24 stages which are laid out on a Monopoly-style board, which is sort of like a map, that has road sign icons on it. Each of the stages contains lessons on useful techniques in playing the game. You're going to be rewarded with a car as you pass each of the lessons. Now the lessons in each of the stages are actually explained to you and demoed by the game. The voiceover's in Japanese, but there really isn't a reason to understand what's being said since the on-screen demo will pretty much show you what you have to do. Now most of the lessons are focused on driving through the corners and aimed towards familiarizing newcomers to the GT series with the racing fundamentals. Some of the lessons are like how to corner on a dirt road, and they really aren't that hard. But the lesson stages have one catch, which is that you'll fail a lesson if you actually leave the course at any time, which is a painful thing that a lot of people should remember if they're fans of the series. So, as you'd imagine, your first priority on these lessons is going to be to play it safe and steady instead of just go for a time record. Getting through all these stages is only probably going to take you about 2 hours if you're used to actually playing the series. It'll take newcomers a little bit longer, and it'll take anybody quite a bit of time to actually get through with the top record for each one of them. As far as the graphics in the game go, Polyphony Digital appears to have put a lot of effort into the backgrounds for all the stages. For example, in the New York stage, which is pretty much based on the Times Square area that we all know, if you look really closely while you're driving near the Virgin Megastore, you're actually going to see there's a McDonald's and a TGI Fridays right next to each other, just like they are in real life. You're also going to find other really good examples of Polyphony's insane attention to detail, such as the partial shadows that are being cast on the cars when driving underneath trees. You're also going to find some pretty cool lighting effects as well, and particle effects for the various tracks. In spite of the really ambitious graphics engine, the frame rate for the game is pretty smooth and offers a really good sense of speed. Now, given that GT4 Prologue Edition is only a sneak peek of what's coming up, the game is understandably missing a few things, such as versus play with another person and any kind of online functionality. One small thing which some fans are having some trouble with is the lack of a calibration option for the GT Force Pro steering controller. But that's really not that big of a deal since we're pretty safe in assuming that it will be in the final version. Another thing that may or may not be in, we haven't really been able to tell yet, is the human AI engine that Polyphony's talked about. For example, the audiences that are supposed to react to the cars passing by right now are pretty simple and just consist of flat polygons that move in a very single predefined pattern. We fully expect that this is going to be addressed by the time the actual game ships. Now, despite these minor omissions and rough spots, GT4 Prologue Edition should be a solid racing fix for fans that are waiting for the full game's release. Now, if you're actually thinking about importing GT4 Prologue Edition, you might actually be in some good shape. If you happen to have a Japanese PS2 or a way to play Japanese import games on your American PS2, this is actually a really good candidate to bring in. The game retails for a pretty low price, so you can import it for probably about $40 or less, depending on where you go. And as for the language barrier, there really isn't much of one. I mean, we kind of mentioned that there's some voiceovers for the lesson modes and stuff that are in Japanese, but you also sort of get a visual cue as well. And even though some of the menus are in Japanese, it's not that big of a deal. So if you're really all about racing, picking this up might not be a bad thing. Now, as for the US, Sony's actually said that they're considering bringing Prologue Edition here, but they haven't really given any details on whether or not that's going to happen. But at the very least, if you want to import it, you should go for it. And if not, there's a chance it could come out here. You can look for more on GT4 Prologue Edition in the coming weeks.